Yeah, baby, we live, baby. And you are now watching Drew Boy Sports Show. I am your host, King Ralph, and I'm here with my co-host, the homie Kai. What's happening, bro? How you feeling, man?
Yo, I'm feeling great. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be back. It's going to be a fun-filled, action-packed day, man. What can I
Living my
say?
life like it's golden. Living my life like it's golden.
Jill Scott. Shout out to the honorary, legendary Jill Scott, Neo Soul Queen.
On God, on God. And so before we get started, send a shout out to the sponsor. You want to do any podcasts like what you're watching, music videos, and photo shoots, call the number on the bottom of the screen, 707 Fitboxer. And make sure you follow all the socials, man. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Make sure you follow on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch at KYNGRALPH. If you're on Twitter, add that underscore. If you want unbiased basketball analysis, USA World Cup, FIBA World Championships is coming up. Make sure you go on Instagram, type in that at the dot House of Hoops.
There we go. Yeah.
House of Hoops.
Make sure I got it this time.
And we're gonna jump right into some hoop talk, but we're gonna keep them socials on the bottom so y'all can make sure y'all go and follow and subscribe and all that. So T-Mac was on Pat Beverly's podcast. He's had a little string of podcasts that he was on, and they got to the conversation about how raw T-Mac was. And then he pretty much asked the question, how did he feel about his legacy? And T-Mac put himself up there with Kobe had he not got hurt. Now I'm going to play some clips so y'all can see exactly what he was talking about. But I even played some graphics on Instagram to show you their stats over the 5-year period before T-Mac unfortunately had his back injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And he averaged more points. He averaged more blocks. He averaged just underneath Kobe when it came to steals. And so it leads you, was he as talented as Kobe in your personal opinion?
So in my personal opinion, I'm actually going to I actually align myself with Byron Scott and some others. I actually believe that Tracy McGrady was a more naturally talented player coming into the NBA than Kobe Bryant. I don't think he was just necessarily on the same level as far as talent. I think skill-wise, yeah, but in terms of just natural talent, I think Tracy McGrady had a God-given talent from his leaping ability. His 42-inch vertical route. He was 6'8", could handle the rock very well. He was a very good playmaker, long-range shooter of the basketball. I think he had the athleticism and the physical tools and the framework, so he was kind of like one of the first of his kind of for being realistic prior to the Kevin Durant's of the world. I know that Kevin Durant is I think 2 or 3 inches taller than T-Mac at like 6'11". So I actually think he was more naturally talented. Byron Scott actually said that what made Kobe great was his work ethic, right? So Kobe, it's not that he wasn't athletic, right? His vertical wasn't as high as T-Mac and some other players. He wasn't as strong naturally as some of these other players when you look at him going up against people. And so that's why I was like, whoa, he's really killing these people. You know what I'm saying? You look at the tape, you're like, wait a second, these people are actually bigger, longer, bigger wingspan, right? And probably more athletic. And he's killing them through pure skill and work ethic. But he said that he believed Tracy McGrady and both Vince Carter were actually more naturally talented than Kobe Bryant coming into the league. And Vince was called Air Canada for a reason. So I actually believe he was actually more of a natural talent than Kobe Bryant. Also, Tracy McGrady could play baseball, right? He said, I think I could throw 90 miles per hour on I Am Athlete. And they really weren't like believing him. And he's like, no, man, I just woke up like that. I could do those things. And he even said that his God-given talent, in an article I found in 2011, when Jeff Van Gundy was talking about like his work ethic, trying to say lack of work ethic, Tracy McGrady believed he had work ethic. He just wasn't a really good practice player, he said. He said, I was never a good practice player, but I leaned on my God-given ability. So I think from a talent perspective, Ralph, raw talent, I believe that Tracy McGrady was actually a little more talented than Kobe Bryant. I think Kobe Bryant, his undying thirst to constantly update his database and add tools to his tool belt so that he could succeed and chase the likes of an MJ and stuff like that. He kind of had to do those things for whatever physical tools that he lacked. So I think that's what made him made him great. But basketball wise, and I'll swing it over to you because you have like the statistics and their impact on the game of basketball. That was the debate for actually many years. I think it was probably like a good 4 or 5 year stretch. It was a debate between them and like Vince Carter. So I actually think Tracy McGrady was a little bit more talented than Kobe Bryant, actually.
And I think I would go as I say that too. And I think that the one thing that I hate when it comes to this conversation is people act as if injuries are solely based on you not taking care of your body. And it's like, so I think the conversation when we start to have many people bring up like Kobe's work ethic. And then when you hear Kobe talk about T-Mac or even hear T-Mac's stories, it's like, yes, I worked on my game. It's just to go out here and be running all these hours of practice. I'm not doing all that.
Right.
So it's like the difference between working on my game and coming in here and wanting to do all these hours of practice. Like, we don't got to do all that.
And you didn't need to.
And so I think that's the conversation that kind of gets misled when it comes to the comparison between the two, because they'll tell you Kobe during this span made four defensive teams, and T-Mac had none. But Kobe had more blocks and averaged just a little bit under him in assists. I mean, not assists, but just under him in steals.
Yes.
Now, not to say that statistics, everything on a defensive to your defensive game shows you you can show up through a stat sheet, but if he wasn't nowhere near as close as Kobe, why is his stats kind of mirror him defensively? And it's just what they were asked to do on those teams is where you get the correlation, or you get the it kind of does a disservice to Tracy McGrady. We always talk about context, especially when it comes to the things that we talk about. So it's like Tracy McGrady was supposed to be, he was going into it thinking he was going to be partnered up with Tim Duncan and Grant Hill. Doc Rivers screws the pooch, supposedly says that Tim Duncan can't bring his wife on the jet or on the plane when the team is traveling. And then Grant Hill, we know what happened with Grant Hill. So now he's forced into a role where his second best player was Darrell Armstrong and then Mike Miller. Mike Miller, we know the career that he had, so he wasn't no slouch, but I still think that unless you got a GOAT, Mike Miller being your second best player, you're just not built to make championships.
Agreed. And he couldn't create his own shot either, right?
Right. Right. And then eventually his back went out to where he was just a spot-up shooter. And so even when he was able to do a Duncan Robinson type of game, except he was more potent offensively, it just was because he was a rookie of the year at one point as well. So I think that it ended up being where, like, a lot of things, when you got to have the context to talk about the thing all the way around, where T-Mac in that 5-year span was a 5-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. He made 2 All-NBA teams, where Kobe made 3 during that same time period. And so I think it's just so many different factors. When you look at the numbers, you go and look at the tape, talk to people that played or watched in that era, you know that T-Mac was just as good as Kobe. It just was, things didn't fall the way that they fell for Kobe. Microfracture, knee surgery, going into the playoffs, where they end up taking the Lakers to 7. Never the same after that. Even I just watched the Pivot podcast where he talked about how he felt after the knee fracture surgery, microfracture surgery, and he knew he wasn't going to be the same player.
Right.
So, according to our polls, the fans, 67% of the fans think T-Mac was as talented as Kobe Bryant.
We got some smart fans.
Next up, we got that fair or the foul. Gilbert Arenas had Trae Young on his podcast, and they got to talking about whether or not Trae Young wanted to play for the USA team, given that for a second time, I don't know if it's second time in a row or second time around, Trae Young was snubbed for a USA team spot
Mhm.
on the roster. We talked about who was on the roster. Trae Young snubbed. Was this fair
So,
or foul to keep him off?
yeah, and I know we talked about this before the show. I actually think it was foul, right? So I believe it was foul for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost, it was foul because Trae Young is a star player. And so a lot of people want to see stars play. A lot of people want to see stars represent our country. We know this is not the official Olympic roster. This is the 2023 FIBA roster. So it's not for Paris. However, if you have a star who says, hey, I want to take time out of my off season to work with the team, play for the team, and he feels like he's being denied a chance to be of service to his country. In this case, in terms of basketball, it is right now. We're talking about military. He should be able to not be denied that freedom. And so he did mention that with Gilbert Arenas. And so I actually like that statement. And so I feel like from that point, it's unfair. Also, I'm looking at some of the reasons why they may not want Trae Young on the team, Ralph. And so I put down a list. We're talking about, poor defender gets lost on defense at times. Shot selection efficiency isn't so great. Small of a stature, so they prefer an international play. They have a litany of history of preferring the bigger guards due to the physical play, right? A James Harden. Obviously, now you have a Tyrese Halliburton, 6'5", 185 pounds, an elite playmaker, right? However, while those things may be true and some of those things can be valid, I think that the fact that Trae Young has led the league in assists and points in the same season, and I believe it was the 2021, 2022 season, he was the second player in league history, Ralph, right? Only the second player in league history to do that at the age of 23. So he can distribute the basketball. He's also a very good outside range shooter. He can shoot from outside range, so he can space the floor. And I believe that he can play off the ball. Now, you say, not you, but I'm saying like people talk about, well, there's some questions about him always needing the basketball, to excel, but you had James Harden on there. Well, James Harden was bigger. Okay, but James Harden's not a better defender. You know what I'm saying, per se. I think they're probably like, okay. So I just think that there are some things that Trae Young could bring to the table. And then last but not least, before I swing it to you, I look at who's in front of him. Halliburton. Okay. Jalen Brunson, 6'1". Now he's 190 pounds. He can shoot, but all right. But I still think that you could bring him Trae Young on there, and then you have Anthony Edwards. But Anthony Edwards is there for you as a shooting guard. He's going to be your primary shot creator, not your playmaker. And then last but not least, we have my main man Austin Reeves. He does a little bit of everything. Defense, can keep the three, playmaking, but he won't be a primary point guard. So that tells me that you have two primary point guards, Ralph. And I think Trae Young is a better player than Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton at this point in his career. So I think he should have been afforded the opportunity just based off of that. So what's your personal opinion on that? I think it's foul.
I think it's foul, man. I can see. I definitely understand where people are coming from. Like when it comes to the game, and fit. Also,
Yeah.
like all the time we see people say like, "Oh, give me your all-time starting five," and then a lot of times they just pick the best five players. But it's like regardless, like we can't at some point putting Shaq, Tim Duncan, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Magic Johnson all on the same team. There's not going to be no shooting on this floor. So when you're making a team, I understand the idea that maybe he doesn't fit in the scheme of a team fit, making the best possible team given what they have. But I think a lot of times you got to go into it. You can't have this idea that it's not gonna work. Like you got to at least give it a chance. And it's like from what I've been hearing or from that podcast, it sounds like he hasn't even been given the opportunity to get out there and try to compete.
Right.
And so that's the part for me that kind of like, all right. Although I like Tyrese Halliburton, I sang his praises going into last season.
Yeah, definitely like him.
And once he got to the Kings, like once he was drafted by the Kings, I sang his praises. So like I definitely understand him. Big guard, 18-9, all-star team, made an all-star team this year. So him, I'm not going to take too much away from. I think the Jalen Brunson thing is more of a you never really hear any character issues when it comes to him, and so you don't hear anything about questions in coaching. You don't hear anything in behavior issues. You hear great leadership, 4 year player out of Villanova, and so I think him. I understand the fit, but is he a better player than Trae Young? No. Then you start to look at like it's crazy. You start to hear during the select games,
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Edwards being in the starting lineup, they was running through the select team.
Yeah.
It's like when you look at it, why was he not starting anyway? And it's like there's nobody on that team.
Yeah.
I think I think given everybody that's there currently, Anthony Edwards is your best player.
Question: Were they Because I didn't mention it. Cade was Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham's on the roster, right?
No, he was
He
on the
was on
select
that
team.
team. Okay, that's why. Okay, because I'm like they don't list him as a point guard. Was okay. Thank you for clarifying for me because I know he was dicing him up as well.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
the next time that they have it go around, I think he'll be a viable roster piece for it.
Yeah, because he's 6'8".
Yeah. So
Two-way
next
player.
up, fair or foul. Jake Paul
Mhm.
thrashes Nate Diaz over the weekend, calls out Canelo like he's been doing. He need to get this foul shit out of here, bro, because it's getting ridiculous, bro. Like, and I'm tired of seeing it. Like, I know some of my homies is trolling, but I know that there's people that genuinely feel like, oh, look at these people he's beating, all the stuff that they're talking. Oh, I want to see him fight Canelo, and it's like, there's levels to this. We just got shown there's levels to this. As great as a lot of people think Earl Spence is, look at how he looked fighting Terrence Crawford.
A fellow boxer.
And it was like Earl Spence had some undisputed to him. We was talking about how his legacy, how he's probably one of the greatest welterweights, or at least in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes up against Crawford, and now people saying he should retire. And so there's levels to it, and I just think that you fighting Nate Diaz, your brother got whooped by KSI.
Mm.
Like, fight someone of that ilk, and then maybe you could possibly have the conversation to where you talk about a Canelo, or fight someone who actually trains to box,
Mm-hmm.
not just for 6 months until they fought you. And so it's foul. I know it's gonna be big money, but money ain't everything, man. And that's the one thing I'll try to tell people: money is not everything. I'm not condoning this. He is foul.
And I piggyback on what you said for all the same reasons that you said. And I also think that I agree. There is a base that I think Jake Paul appeals to. And so I think, I think I'm not sure if you saw this, Ralph, but Jake Paul has, if I'm not mistaken, a Netflix special, I believe, on there where he talks about like him and his brother and like competing and then him becoming a professional athlete and really wanting to show people that I can, do these things and stuff like that. And so I have no problem with doing, striving for your dreams, shooting for the stars, but there are levels. These are people who have spent years since they were young, kids training to be professional boxers. And you got to think, Ralph, you're talking about someone who was one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
Like the world, not just, in a state or vice versa. You have people who represent their countries as well. So I think that when you look at a fight between Paul and Canelo, I'm like, come on, man. Like, no. And Earl Spence, his face was jacked up. He didn't even come to the fight looking right anyway. But like after that, man, like crash test dummy, as we call it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm agreeing with you. I think this is foul. And this is a fight that does not need to happen. All money is not good money. It'd be bad money for you to spend your money on on the fight. So, yeah, I believe it's foul.
All right. Next up, man, we got a lot of expansion and teams moving conferences and in the college ranks. Some teams that have been moving over. And before we start this topic, shout out to David out of Cedar Hill, Texas. tuning in. We appreciate the love and
Salute.
support. Make sure you like and subscribe as well, though. We need that. We need that. But we got Texas, Oklahoma, USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, ASU, Colorado, Utah, and possibly Florida State are all teams that have either talked about or actually transferred conferences. Is this fair? Or
I
is it
don't think it's.
foul?
I think it's foul. All this moving that the college football is doing, right, or posturing to do. I don't believe it's fair, man. I say it's foul because I'm the type of person who I like my rivalries. I like my rivalries. It's just like the Red River rivalry, right? You want to see the Red River rivalry, you know what I'm saying? You want to see the USC rivalries, and you want to see the SEC rivalries, and I don't like it because I look at it from this standpoint. I know it's a different sport, but I'll never forget how the Big Ten changed basketball, right? In the Maryland and Duke rivalry, I grew up on that, Ralph. Right, so you can say I was nostalgic, but I grew up on it. It had an impact on how I view sports, on life, different things of that nature. So when I see all this movement and stuff like that, call me old school, and I'm sure there's some benefits to it, but I'm just not a fan of all the shifting like jigsaw puzzle pieces. I feel like the puzzle was already fine before. Now you try to shift the puzzle and make things fit where they don't fit. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of my analogy of it. So I don't know. Maybe you think differently, but I'm just not. I'm not a fan of it. I think it's foul.
I'm here for it, bro. I think
All
it's
right.
fair. I think it's fair because
Give your perspective. This is
although I do agree with you, I'm real big on the rivalries.
Mhm.
I think that we have lost those little rivalries, like the Big East when it came to basketball, the UConns, the Syracuse, the Providence, Georgetown, NC State being involved in all of that. Like I do think that you did lose some of that with NC State going down to the ACC, with UConn moving to. I think they stayed in the Big East, but Georgetown. No, not Georgetown. Who moved? Syracuse went to the ACC.
Yep.
I know that was one. I think UConn stayed in the Big East.
Maryland went to the Big Ten.
Maryland went to the Big Ten.
Michigan and Penn State, they're all over there already. So
Right. And so I'm like, I do think it could be good. Like, I think it's a good thing, like USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. Losing,
okay.
you get the likes of like Colorado. I think Colorado moved to the Big Ten, where Nebraska is already a team that's in that movement with them. With Arizona and ASU might be possibly joining the Big Ten, or the which I think would be the Big 18 or something like that, or Big 16 at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, shout out to them, man. J. Paul needs to stop fighting bums, yo. Stop fighting bums. Fighting bums. But I think that is good. I think it's good for the sport. I think you got to look at it as more than just on the football side. You got to look at it as a whole. And I think that it's gonna go down from where it's a power 5 to like a power 3, and I'm here for it.
You see effect on recruiting?
Yeah, because I think that when you get to certain spots, like, all right, if regardless of, like, Texas might be on the up and up now, but they're moving to the SEC, so now I can go to Texas. But and the one thing about going to Texas was like, well, Texas isn't in the SEC, or Oklahoma isn't in the SEC, so now I can see how good I actually am against the Georgias, against the Bamas, against the Tennessee Volunteers. And so I'm here for it. I think that it is going to help recruiting when it comes to certain schools. And then it also pulls that whole, well, you didn't play anybody out of the conversation as well, especially when it comes to strength of schedule, when it comes to football.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't have any issue with that perspective. I like when we had like the polar opposite sometimes, that we can see pros and cons of each. Yeah. Okay.
And next up, I think they just released the top player in all of the NFL according to the players. So we're slowly working our way there. Today we are going through 80 through 61. So
you got the list.
At 80, we got your boy Mark Andrews, tight end out of Baltimore. We got Dre Greenlaw, linebacker out of San Francisco. Sticking with San Francisco, we got Talanau Hufanga, safety. Geno Smith, Tariq Woolen, Trey Hendrickson, Garrett Wilson, Buda Baker, your boy Lamar, and DeForest Buckner going from 80 to 70. Now, I think a lot of this is like, it's rough having these conversations because, like, Geno Smith, I think Geno Smith is properly placed, given what he was able to do with that team last year. Some of it to me is like Mark Andrews, that high or that low, given what he's been able to do, what he did last year. And it's just like putting people like a Tariq Woolen, you're going to put him over Mark Andrews after one season. And it's like, that's for me where I think we go back to that conversation of where and what is the criteria. Is it, are we doing this on a year by year basis? Or is what you have done, what you will do, and what you did last year? Like, I just wish there was some type of criteria as far as that, because I think some people are properly placed. Like, I would say Buda Baker is properly placed. I think Garrett Wilson is properly placed. I think Lamar, Mark Andrews, and maybe even like a Tariq Woolen could possibly be higher on this list than they are right now, because Joey Bosa is, I think he was 79 on the list, and it's like, sir, how he played 6 games. Oh, he's 70. He's 70 on the list.
Oh wow!
He only played 6 games.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that last time too, or something about the games missed. Yeah.
And it's like, all right, like, starts to take a little bit of the credibility away from what we're looking at here. And that's the part for me that makes it like a difficult conversation. Okay.
So my perspective on the list, I do think the rankings at this time, I think they're egregious. I think people know where I would go with it. But I'm just going to say, I'm going to first say I agree with you in terms of what is a criteria. We have yet to see a set criteria. Now, I'm somebody, ladies and gentlemen, who I do respect coaches and peers. I usually prefer that over media talking heads and different things of that nature, right? Then I can't sit up here and say, oh, well, if you respect those people, and then you're going to get mad at when a player says this. I'm like, well, it doesn't also mean that I have to agree with them either. It just means I respect their opinion a little bit more. I hold it with a little more face value, a little more weight. But we don't have a set criteria. Also, I'm looking at Mark Andrews. Like you said, Mark Andrews has consistent production over a course of multiple seasons. He's a veteran. He's a top 3 tight end at his position, right? And he's the second best tight end in the entire AFC conference. So you look at that. He also has postseason success. If you want to say, okay, well, this is based off of what they did last season. Well, if that's the case, we have quarterbacks who have led, which we'll get to probably on another list, the league in interceptions this past season, who missed 5 games and set an NFL record for being the only player in the NFL history to miss 5+ games and lead the league in interceptions in a single season. Someone set an NFL record doing that, and they're higher than a quarterback in this range who's a unanimous MVP. So what is the criteria for that? Like you said, it's just all over the place. So the 3 names you mentioned, I actually agree with. Tariq Woolen, player I like. Tariq Woolen, Mark Andrews, and Lamar Jackson would actually be significantly higher on the list for me. I have Lamar pretty high, but not as high as people will think when we get to that point, maybe later on down the list who's there. but just based off like injury and stuff like that. So I just feel like you said, Ralph, you took the words out of my mouth. We just still, I feel like we're going to say it every week. We need some type of criteria of players because some of it kind of seems like y'all just choosing your friends, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Got 49ers back to back, and the 49ers have good players.
Right.
So that's all I'm going to say about it. I don't really have much else to say.
And like I said, we got Joey Bosa at 7, Matt Milano, outside linebacker for the Buffalo Bills at 69, Zach Martin for the Dallas Cowboys at 68, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver at 67 for the Lions.
Wow.
His quarterback, Jared Goff, at 66. Darius Slay at 65. Aaron Jones at 64. Grady Jarrett, defensive tackle for the Falcons at 63. Bobby Wagner, still in that thing, at 62.
Wow.
He actually had a pretty good season for them to be saying he's slipping. Deebo Samuels at 61.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I actually think Big Play Slay should be lower on the list. And when I say lower, meaning like lower as in good.
Yeah.
Lower on the list. Bobby Wagner, solid maybe, but I think that there's other players that we might have mentioned on the defensive side of the ball that I would still take over him now. If we're talking about going into 2023, once again, that goes back to criteria. Matt Milano, okay. Matt Milano, a nice linebacker from the Bills, makes an impact on the Bills, veteran. So, yeah, but I would think a Big Play Slay because his name is so prominent. And also the Ravens tried to actually get him, not to make everything about my team, but they tried to get him for a reason. So he still has value. Teams want him. So I would put him there. And, Ralph, Big Play Slay was the only corner that really gave Justin Jefferson, who some believe is currently the Don Dada at the wide receiver position going into 2023. His claim as the best wide receiver in the league. So I think that Big Play Slay being able to, produce or halt the production somewhat of Justin Jefferson in a marquee matchup, I think that is a testament to his greatness. So what do you think? Do you have any issues with those players before we move
on? There's some people that I think Deebo Samuels can definitely and it can be argued that he should be higher or lower on the list.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Him, Darius Slay are people that we just shouldn't have brought up yet.
Right.
I think Aaron Jones at 64 is a little high. And I think he's a good back too. So it's not to discredit him. I just think 60. If you got Darius Slay at 65, it's a little too high for you had Aaron Jones at 64.
Did we mention Austin Eckler? Yeah.
Not yet. No.
Okay. So I was gauging that. Okay.
And so I'm like, Jared Goff. Jared Goff had a heck of a season, so I'm not going to count him out. He balled out. Was one of the reasons why that team played so well. They had a heck of an offense, and they're expected to get better. There's a reason why they didn't go out and try to draft a quarterback high. Jared Goff had a heck of a season, kind of similar to like a Geno Smith.
Change of scenery. Yeah. Good system right there.
I think Bobby Wagner, being where he's at, considering he was 33rd on the list last year.
Oh, okay.
So he moves down to 62, where he's kind of
that's not bad.
Still one of the better players, but at the same time, like he had a heck of a season: 140 tackles, 6 sacks, 10 for loss, 3 interceptions.
Man,
like
he's a Hall of Famer too,
right? And so it's like for people to be saying, like, "Oh, he's losing a step." Nah, that team just wasn't that good.
Yeah. Him losing a step is still like top tier for the average linebacker at the position, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you brought up Hall of Fame. It was Hall of Fame inductees over the weekend. So we got some of the likes of a Darrell Revis, a Zach Thomas, Rondé Barber, Marcus Ware, Joe Thomas to lead some of the names. What were some of your takeaway?
So it was an emotional night. It was a very, very emotional night. A lot of tears, a lot of cheers, a lot of, all that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to be Dr. Seuss here, but It's like in the show. No, anyway. Hey, that was a cold intro, though. I can't even lie, though. Sometimes I amaze myself. But Zach Thomas, shout out to Zach Thomas, man. Wreaked havoc in the AFC for years, man.
Yeah.
He's a Dolphin by blood, man. You know, this is a guy who he made a statement, Ralph, that I believe he said it was 27 years to the day that he became the starting linebacker for the Miami Dolphins by the coach. So he thanked the coach. He took time to pay tribute to the late, great Junior Seau, Hall of Fame outside linebacker who played for the San Diego Chargers. He said that he had his picture on his wall when he was in college dorm. He looked at the Junior Seau, how he played the game, and he said he wanted to be just like Junior Seau. So that was very touching moment, and also someone who was revered and respected amongst his peers from all walks of life, NFL and et cetera. So that was really, really cool for him to, pay tribute to him. And, it was on his day, a day that was about himself, Zach Thomas, right? Or his moment, excuse me, when he was on stage. And another takeaway was the Darrelle Revis, who I consider Darrelle Revis like 1B at the cornerback position. I believe that Deion's probably the best playmaker, versatile, but then you have Deion Sanders, man-to-man cover corner, arguably the greatest, or not arguably, really the greatest cover season, 2009, against the ilk of receivers that, our era, Ralph, like the Randy Moss of the world, the Ocho Cincos of the world, the T.O.s of the world, Calvin Johnsons of the world. And what he was able to do, he said that I'm Kobe to Prime's Jordan. So a lot of us know the relationship, the tight-knit relationship and love of mutual respect that MJ and Kobe have for each other. So he believes that those are the two best at his position, but he looks up to Deion. He idolized Deion. And so it was really cool to see him. It seems like a lot of these players seem to talk more about others than themselves. So I think something that I take away from it, Ralph, a central theme here, guys, is humility. There was humility, there was humbleness, and there was appreciation to those who came before them, right? So I thought that was really cool. And then lastly, DeMarcus Ware, once again, just his impact, his speech, him paying tribute to Cowboys that have fallen, some lost teammates. That was really touching. He thanked his Broncos teammates as well. And he mentioned Tony Romo, the most talkative sports commentator on CBS Sports. So you know what I'm saying? So I'm sure he wreaked havoc with him in scrimmages many a time. So I just really like the class, like the names that you named. I just like the class of players. And I thought the speeches were really touching. So what do you think, man? What was your takeaways, what you're able to get from it?
There's some people on there, like, I remember us talking about this going into it, and I remember saying how I felt like, now that I felt like Zach Thomas, there's other people that could have gone in before Zach Thomas. Yeah. So not to discredit Zach Thomas, I think that he deserves it. Congratulations, heck of a player. Watching his speech and him talking about Junior Seau and actually having the opportunity to meet Junior Seau as a teenager. Nice guy, sweet, one of the nicest athletes I've met and had the opportunity to come across. I remember my brother, I probably was 14. My brother's probably my daughter's age now, 4 years old. And so Junior Seau kneels down to take a picture with him. And my brother runs behind him, jumps on his back, and kind of like grabs him from around his neck. Wow. And I just remember that moment. Like, some people could have been like, with that stature that they were at, were like, "Oh, get off me." But he like laughed it off, took the picture with my brother around on his shoulders. And like, it's just such a dope moment. So it's like, for someone, I can feel it and relate to that, looking up to Junior Seau, who was to me, he growing up, until I seen Ray Lewis, he was the best middle linebacker I had seen.
Understand it. Yep.
And so Zach Thomas, watching him, well respected, heck of a player, gave his all on the field, and now we're starting to get to a point where people we grew up watching, where you got Rondé Barber and what he was able to do with the Buccaneers. Also, someone else that we could talk about when we had that conversation of DBs from corner all the way to safety.
Yep.
That we had this conversation off the camera.
Mhm.
But then I think like what Devin Hester was able to do, I just feel like that's a snub. Um, Someone in our comment section is another person they feel
Yeah.
like is there's always going to be people that every year we're just going to look at them and think like, oh man, they should have made it. Torrey Holt, Steve Smith Sr., Roger Craig,
Yeah.
Dwight Freeney, Reggie Wayne.
Mhm.
Like now, regardless of how you look at these people, I feel like Dwight Freeney, Devin Hester, and Steve Smith are people that should have
Made it.
made it this year. Now we'll see because I'm always going to argue on Fred Taylor. Fred Taylor's another one that I feel like every year he gets snubbed, and I'm just not really understanding it. I feel like there's a lot of hate.
Mhm.
Howard Ford is another that
Mhm.
that should get brought up as well.
Mhm.
And so every year we're going to have this conversation. It was good to see the Darrell Reeveses, the Rondé Barbers, the Joe Thomas. Um, Joe Thomas was the tackle for the Browns, right?
Yep.
And like that team was terrible the whole time he was on it, but
And he was good.
he was so good at what he did. So it's good to see some people get in there, and but I did notice when I seen some names, I was just like, but they weren't better players than this.
Mhm.
So like,
It's crazy because like I feel like, and I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but I feel like the wide receiver position, like when you mention names like Torrey Hall, when you mention names like Steve Smith Sr., the level of quarterback play that he had to endure playing with, before obviously they got Cam Newton and all that, but and producing at the size that he was, right, starting off I think on special teams and vice versa, and making his way. I feel like it's so much harder, or not. I don't want to say so much harder because I don't want to disrespect anyone, but it seems like due to the depth of the position, Ralph, it's like
yeah,
the wide receiver position. They always have to wait. Now
yeah,
with T.O., there was a lot of politics with it, but T.O. should have been first ballot. But
right,
but after that, like they've made a lot of people wait. I think Isaac. I'm not sure if Isaac Bruce even got in on the first ballot. I could be wrong, but I feel like he had to wait for some time. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely agree with you there. And then my last and final point on the Hall of Fame induction and inductees and future inductees is when you mentioned Fred Taylor. I value this is what goes back to what me and you always say: look at the tape and look at and value what the players, their peers, what your peers say about you is like the greatest honor, right? So Dwight Freeney, for example, being a Ravens fan, I remember whenever we played the Colts, Ray Lewis would play chess with in terms of how he maneuvers blitzes against Peyton Manning, while on the other side on offense, Jonathan Ogden had to take the brunt of Dwight Freeney, and they used to talk about the matchup. Now Dwight Freeney would come in with that spin move, and boom, 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 and Ogden used to shut everyone down. But the one person that would give Ogden some trouble or some problems was always Dwight Freeney. And
yeah,
so that's something where Baltimoreans, we knew of that matchup whenever we got a chance to play them, even though we weren't division rivals. So just the respect that Freeney had for Ogden and Ogden had for Freeney is why I feel like some of these players should get in off the brunt of just like, hey, I had good enough statistics, maybe not better than some of the people in there, but the peers will tell you, oh, that dude was.
yeah, he could go.
Yeah, what Dion used to say. It's like we be looking around, or Eric Dickerson would say, it's like, how'd you get in here? Like,
Right,
you know what I'm
right.
saying? Like, yeah, but anyway.
It'd be some people that's like you just were good, you put up good numbers for a
Yeah,
long period of time, but it was like you weren't the best.
yeah, you were impactful like that.
Right, right. And I think it's good, man. Like you said, like the Demarcus Ware, heck of a legacy. Played for
Mm.
two teams I absolutely hate, but can't stand them Cowboys, and I really don't like the Broncos.
Yeah, the
Uh,
ponies, Denver ponies. Yeah.
and so yeah, like seeing what he was able to do, the force that he was coming off that edge.
Mm.
Like I mentioned, Joe Thomas, Hall of Famer for a terrible team. Like Darrell Reeves in that '09 season is hard to match. And then that fierce competitor that Zach Thomas was. And then Rondé Barber was just every year you're just going to see him up there when it comes to interceptions. He was going to be, you had the game plan against him when it came to running on wide receivers on his side of the field. So I'm happy to see them get in next year. I need to see some of those names I mentioned. I hope the one for me that's going to really do it for me is Fred Taylor, and another one will be Devin Hester. Those are the two that I really want to see get in the Hall next year.
Agreed.
And then, so with a little bit of, not a little bit of time, we actually got a lot of bit of time. But we had some topics pop up today that we could talk about. But first up, Aces get obliterated by the Liberty. Now, since then, they came back, they beat the stank off the Dallas Wings, which at one point they were up by 40. They even doubled the Dallas Wings total. They eventually won by 20. But should the Aces be worried?
Should they be worried? I'm going to say with all due respect, no. But what they did, here's what they did, Ralph. They earned the respect of the New York Liberty. Now, I'd be like, well, what do you mean? New York Liberty ain't won nothing. Ain't we no chip on us, man? No. What I mean by it is once again, it's the jungle. I love to use a jungle mentality. I like to use the Glock for Glock mentality, whatever you want to use it, right? Mano y mano, you know what I'm saying? They came into their house in New York Liberty, right? What was it, a home game? I don't know if it was a home game. I'm sorry, my bad. But excuse me, the New York Liberty, they came to play against the Aces. Well, apparently they definitely came to play, and one team didn't come to play, right?
Right.
And I was talking to my dad about this. Shout out to my dad, Mr. Clark. But and I said we see this in sports a lot, where you want to send a message, right? So the Aces are the hunted, but very few teams, really, not many, have the talent to even compete with the Aces. But the New York Liberty do. They have a league MVP. And Breanna Stewart. You have Sabrina Ionesco, right, the 3-point champion and one of the elite point guards of the WNBA. So real quick, they came in and the coach wanted to make sure they send a message so they could test as a to see where they were. You know what I'm saying? Where I think they took the game more seriously than the Aces. And so the Aces came in, they got smacked in the mouth, and you knew someone with the competitive fervor of Becky Hammond wasn't going to let that slide. And so what did they do, Ralph? They responded in the next game. So now the next time that they see them, which will probably be, let's be real, probably the finals playoffs, right? What do you expect is going to happen, right? It's going to be some John. It's probably going to be some hard play. And it's good for the league. You know what I'm saying? It's unfortunate there was a franchise history loss, but it's a wake-up call. So, you know what I'm saying? Ain't no time to cry and lick the wounds. Like, no, you get back up and you play the next team. So that's what I think about it. But yeah, they got their behinds kicked. So
yeah, they got destroyed. I looked up, seeing that score, was like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
They getting killed right now. Like Adrian Brunner said, I'm getting cooked right now.
Cooked right there.
But I think it's one of those things, man. I think, yes, they literally got slapped in the mouth. Asia Wilson got elbowed in the face in that game and ended up having to leave the game. Eventually came back. It didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's a lot of things that you can go into when it comes to this. I'm trying to see if, because I know I got a notification about a game. Oh, so the Aces are able to get their lick back August 15th. I believe that's the day of the Commissioner's Cup. Because they have back-to-back games against the New York Liberty. They play on the 15th and they play on the 17th. And I think the game on the 15th is the game for the Commissioner's Cup. So they're able to get their lick back, but I think that, like you said, it is a wake-up call because, like we said, going into the season, I think the Liberty were the one team that can go Glock for Glock, like you would say, and you can match up, and they have enough talent to be able to get it done. Now, I think that the Aces are a deeper team, but at the same time, when you have when you got Stewie over there, who is arguably the best player in the league right now. The ability to take you in the post, take you off the dribble, be able to shoot inside, outside, 3-level scorer, as well as be a playmaker. Then you have Sabrina, like you mentioned, 3-point shooter, ability to take you off the dribble. Eventually, she's going to end up being. I wouldn't be surprised when she's the triple double leader by the end of her career.
Oh yeah, easily. At the pace that she's going at.
Right. And so I think when you're able to have that type of talent, where we talked about the Heat and the Nuggets in that finals, when you take the 5 best players, regardless of who's out there, and you got 2, maybe 3 of the 5, that's where it starts to have a certain type of conversation that you got to have, where you got to respect it. But when we start talking about the Liberty and the Aces in the long run, when it comes to a finals game or a final series, like I mentioned, New York Liberty are going to have 2. I think that the Aces, when you got a Kelsey Plum, a Chelsea Gray, and Asia Wilson, not to mention Candace Parker and Jackie Young, I just think yes, you should be worried.
Yeah.
But also make sure that if you come to play, your best game can beat their best game.
Yeah, we have more soldiers or soldierettes, however you want to call it. Exactly. We have too much ammo. You know what I'm saying? But we hope.
And then next up, Anthony Davis gets a record-breaking contract extension.
Mm-hmm.
Was this a smart move?
I think it was a smart move. I know a lot of people, speak ill of Anthony Davis on social media or say these things, but really the things they're saying really don't really hold much weight, right? I think outside of the Achilles or the foot thing that he had, Anthony Davis, he has ticky-tack injuries, but nothing that's going to leave him out of where he's missed a full season. I don't think he's ever missed a full season of games. He's played more games in LA than the premier stars of one Kawhi Leonard, who had billboards all over. One Paul George, he's played more games, been more healthy than all those stars, right? Combined, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Secondly, we got to look at his impact on the court, Ralph. He had a profound impact on the defensive side of the ball. It was a reason why they were also able to make the Western Conference Finals with his defense. Now, he was inconsistent. He was up and down, and that's the issue that a lot of people in the media and as well as Laker fans as a whole do have with Anthony Davis. But outside of Giannis, Anthony Davis is the clear-cut second-best power forward in the NBA, and so he needs to be played like the best power forward in the NBA. We see what Zion Williamson, I'm sorry, he's been doing, in the last season. So Anthony Davis is just, hey, I'm producing, and this is also coming after a season, Ralph, where remember there was criticism of him. Oh, I haven't picked up a basketball in months. Well, they made the Western Conference Finals, so right. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have any issue with it. And then finally, if I'm not mistaken, it lines up with LeBron's, I think, last year of his deal or vice versa. So if LeBron ever decides to choose to retire, what star would they bring in and potentially, bring in with Anthony Davis? So, or maybe they draft some like great high school player, but you know what I'm saying? So I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, me personally, I don't really have an issue with it. I think that it is a smart move. I think that it gives you some kind of stability, lets you know, like, hey, we believe in you, we rocking with you. As LeBron gets older, Father Time is undefeated. So as much as we can sit here and say LeBron is playing at a high level, his game has changed, and he's not able to do as much. So now you need Anthony Davis to be able to step into that role and be that guy. So I'm going to pay you like you're that guy. Go show me you're that guy. And so I think a lot of times it does get things do get blown out of proportion. Like with the whole I haven't touched the basketball in months conversation, he just had a bad season to a certain degree, a bad playoff run. So for you to then after that, the optics of it is one of those things that it just doesn't look good, doesn't sound good. Why would you say that, knowing that people in your comment section talking about how you just had a trash playoff run? So I think that's where a lot of things, when it comes to the media, social media especially, I think that's where that vitriol comes from, is instances like that. It just be the optics of how certain things look. Like, I feel like every time this man go to the ground, we like, oh my God.
Right.
And so like that, like during the playoffs, he was like, I can't move my arm. I can't feel my arm. Sir, my man, street clothes. That's why we call you street clothes.
Right.
Because at least like Paul George goes to the ground, we're not looking like that. But it be certain like structural stuff that'll happen with Kawhi and Paul George. But at the end of the day, I think it's a smart move. It's a good thing for the Lakers being able to lock in that talent, be able to build around with those young pieces that they got over there.
Yeah, they got a nice team. Just keep them away from Xavier Tillman. It'll be all right. I was like, who is Xavier Tillman, man? He was working. I was like, come on, AD.
Man, I remember him from college because I used to see him like, yo, that dude looked like he got a family.
Right.
A wife and a family.
I'm like, he's young, Ralph. I'm like, what? I was like,
man, he got the young struggle face.
Facts, man. He been through some things, man. But anyway,
Steve Thurman accepts the intergender boxing match with Clarissa Shields. Says that he'll only jab her, or a fighter with one hand behind his back, or something along the lines of fighter with one hand. She says she wants all the smoke. Mm-hmm. You think this is a good move?
The devil on my shoulder says yeah, but the angel's like, oh, don't do it. But it's for entertainment purposes. I don't really see a problem with it, man. Because here's why I say it's a good move. It's for charity. Everyone loves charity. Hey, this is supposed to be for charity. Clarissa Shields making it about something else, apparently or allegedly. Like there's a pride thing going on with her. You know what I'm saying? Let's be real. So I don't want to put words in her mouth. I know it's a pride thing. She even posted a video of her like sparring with real men and all that as a response to Keith Thurman saying, I'll only jab you. I'll use a bigger glove. You can use a boxing glove. He's making all these ramifications and different things to the fight. So I think for charity, yeah, but Clarissa Shields is trying to prove something like she's on the same level as male boxers. And it's like, it's okay for genders to like, hey, look, men in boxing is completely different. Like, please, let's not get into down that road, that rabbit hole. Right. So yeah, but other than that, for the cause of good, I don't have an issue with it. But anything else, like, I ain't really going to get into it. This is a quick hitter. I kind of want to know your stance on it.
It's a lose-lose situation, honestly, in my personal opinion. Because what if he goes out there and he's hitting her with jabs?
Oh, well, yeah.
And then she come back, she hit him with a flurry, kind of hit him kind of hard. And now it's like, wait a minute. I'm not gonna. Then he come out really swinging. It's like, bro, you lost already. Then what if he come out there and just jab her all night and she don't get knocked out or get hurt? Then it's like it's a lose-lose situation in my personal opinion. I'm like, I wouldn't personally do it. Because if you go out there and beat her down, like she's saying really fight, and you go out there and really fight, like, why would you do that? You're a man. Then man. Like, what if you go out there and she actually work him out?
Yeah.
Or you got worked out by a girl. Like
you think that everything that will go wrong could possibly go wrong with that fight, especially if you have Clarissa trying to prove something.
Right. She come out there really trying to scrap it. You just out here like.
Right. Next thing you know, Thurman hits her with a bow. Thurman, no.
Left hook. No. Like.
Oh, he'll be all over TMZ, man.
Keep all over TMZ.
All
over Sports Center. He get canceled.
Oh man.
No
spin. She hit him with a flurry, man. That took me out, bro.
She hit him with a make it. Like it'd be all bad, man. It's not a good look.
She gonna swing like Pacquiao was trying to do versus Floyd, man. Oh man.
Swinging super hard, just wild too. Like
right.
And it's crazy. I think it's interesting because I just went back and looked at it because this is other boxer. I can't think of her name right now. She has like 15 fights and 11 knockouts. And so she was talking about how like she wasn't afraid of Clarissa because Clarissa always goes the distance. And I went back and looked. It's like she's undefeated, but she only has like 3 or 4 knockouts.
Hey, maybe Clarissa should worry about that fighter and fight her.
Right.
Like, man, instead of Thurman, you know.
But thank you all for watching. Make sure you follow those socials at the bottom. Like, subscribe, share. We're out.